Hi, welcome back to Emoji Economics. My name is Godwin. We'll be talking about the aggregate demand curve in this particular class. I believe you understand what curves are. Curves just show graphical representations between two variables, usually one dependent variable and the other independent variable, and sometimes it could be more than one variable. Anyway, that's not what we are looking at today. So the aggregate demand curve. So what is demand? Of course, from our microeconomics classes, we already, by now, everyone should understand that demand is talking about the output, the quantities of goods and services that people are willing and able to buy at a given price and at a particular period of time. Now, when we are looking at the aggregate demand, we are talking about the entire economy. We moved from microeconomics to macroeconomics. All right. So, and this when we are looking at the economy, we are talking about all of the goods produced in an economy. In fact, not just all of the goods. We are talking about all of the goods and services. Okay. So the production of, we are talking about books. We are talking about computers. We are talking about houses. We are talking about housing materials. We are talking about clothes. All right. We are talking about educational services. All of those things. We are just talking about output in whatever form that they come. All right. So that's what aggregate demand is talking about. And a definition, okay, for aggregate demand is simply talking about it is the sum of all output demanded in an economy at a period of time, okay, and at a given price level. So let me have that at a given price level. Now, price level is not talking about the prices of goods. Price level is talking about the average. When we are looking at the price level, we are talking about the entire economy. We are not referring to the price of a particular commodity. No, that's not what we are looking about. We are looking at the average price level of what we have in the economy. And usually, it is changes in this average price level that result into inflation. Okay, but so aggregate demand is just the sum of all the output demanded in an economy at a given period of time and at a given price level. So from that, we then move to the aggregate demand curve. Aggregate demand curve just shows the relationship between the average price level as well as the output, the aggregate output that is being demanded in an economy at a particular period of time. Okay, so there's something that we should note from here. I was trying to tell you that the aggregate demand is talking about price level, whereas the normal demand curve is talking about prices. So we can't sum up the demand curves for let's say the market demand curves for all the output in an economy, and then that gives us the aggregate demand curve. No, that is not what we are basically talking about here. So it's kind of different. Just note that when you're looking at the aggregate demand curve, we are talking about the overall price level in an economy, and which is quite different from what you are when you're looking at the normal demand curve, okay, individual market demand curve for a particular product, and so on and so forth. And here you are not even looking at one product, you are looking at several other products that may commanding different kind of prices. Of course, usually different prices at different period of time. So now this particular class is going to be requiring, because we have to derive the aggregate demand curve, obviously, and then it has a kind of slope, and we have to explain why we have that particular slope. So that takes us to what we learned when we're talking about the ISLM model. There are 7 classes on ISLM model. So if you haven't seen any of them, or if you don't have a background knowledge of the ISLM model, of course you can purchase these videos. I believe you know how to do that. At the end of this video, you should be, if you don't know how to do that, at the end of this video, of course, you would be taught how to acquire those videos as well as several other videos. So remember that then we're talking about the IS relation, okay? So where the IS relation was, although we'll not be using this in particular class, but I just want you guys to remember to recall it. Y plus T, then you have investments is a function of interest rate and output that we discussed then to be sales. Then we have, I think, G, government spending or something. Then we also have the LM relation. The LM relation. Okay, then this is IS relation. No, don't let me use greater than. Just let me use greater than. Let me do something like this. IS relation. Then the LM relation was, if I recall properly, so you have money demand divided by price. It's a function of income. It's proportional to income. Where this is a function of interest rates. Anyway, we'll be needing something like this in the subsequent classes, because they are going to be, I think, that in the next 5, including this class. So the next 5 classes will be coming back to this. So I've already mentioned that the what do you call it now? The aggregate demand curve shows the relationship between output, all right, and then the overall price level. Let me just name it P, the overall price level. So now I want to look at what is going to be the nature or the slope of this particular curve. So let's say at this given price level, we have this output, let's say Y1. So what happens when our price level increases? So let's say P2, when the overall price level increases to P2. And because this is talking about the entire economy, so one thing you must note when we are saying that overall price level increasing simply means that the prices of all outputs are increasing, okay, as well as inputs. Okay, inputs are required because it's overall price level. So the price of let's say a bulb is increasing, the price of a shirt is increasing, the amount it takes to construct a road is increasing, the price of agricultural products are increasing, and then we talk about the price of laborers, really wages, they are also increasing. So we have all of these things that increase at the same period of time. So when I'm saying an increase in the price level, don't just look at it as an increase in the price of output alone. Also, we should also note that the output of a particular firm could be what do you call it now? Could be a final product, or it could be an intermediate product. Okay, so that's when we say that there is an overall increase in the price level, we are trying to look at it that firms are charging more prices for their products, and then because a firm's product sometimes or many times is an input to another firm's product. Okay, so firms are also experiencing an increase in their cost of production because their cost of inputs are also rising. So just understand it that way. When we say that the average price level is rising, it is talking about everything that has a price kind of in the economy, all of them rising at the same time. Okay, so an increase in the price level, what does it affect? Okay, that takes us to, if you look at the IS relation and the LM relation, where do you have price? Okay, this is price, this is not just price, okay, price level. Okay, an increase in the price level simply means that there's going to be something that will be happening in the money markets. Okay, and so in the money market, if you recall from the money market, how should I draw these stops? Let me draw that here. Okay, here. So this is the graph A, right? So this is going to be graph B. So in graph B, you have money, the real money supply, which is MS over P, where MS is money supply and MS over P is the real money supply. What we have here is the real money balance, RMB, real money balance, please. So origin 0, okay, and so we then have interest rate on this axis, So we draw the real money demand, which is MD over P, somewhere like this, all right, and then this is the interest rate. So an increase in the price level simply means that there is an increase in the price transactions will now be taking place. So what people could afford before, all right, they need more money to be able to afford that same thing, and that is trying to tell us that it's not just people though. They hope you understand what I mean. Firms spend. So what firms were spending to produce a particular output before, for them to maintain that output, they need to demand more money. They need more money, okay, to maintain that, because obviously price has gone up. So that's what we are trying to say. The same thing goes for households. What they could buy before, now they to maintain that that level of consumption. So they also need to increase their money demand, of course. So that is what is going to lead to a shift. There's going to be a shift of this curve because there's an increase in the price level, and that increases this. So the curve shifts here. Okay, this was meant to be blue though, blue marker, but no problem. So we then have this. Something we have this. So there's going to be an increase in the interest rate from I1 to I2. So we have this as a result of an increase in money demand. Then what happens to the LM curve? So let's trace that out. Let me just here. Okay. So we have 0. We have here we have the output, and here we have the interest rate, obviously. Now we trace out this initial interest rate is this. I'm trying to make it straight. So we have this initial interest rate here, and then let's say the output here is something like this, which is Y1. Now that the interest rate has gone up, recall that it wasn't the aggregate outputs that went up, which we otherwise known as the aggregate income, or it could be sales, total sales in an economy. Alright, it wasn't this one that increased, so something else is causing the interest rates to rise. So that means our aggregate output for now is still the same thing, and it is the interest rate is now rising to this point. So we have I2 here. Okay, and so at this same output, we have an increase in interest rates. So that means, of course, if you remember, the LM curve is upward sloping. So we have the LM1, and so it has shifted to this place, LM2. Now this is happening simply because the real money supply is the same thing. If there had been a corresponding increase in the real money supply in order to accommodate the increase in money demand, we shouldn't be having something like this. It depends though, but we shouldn't be having something as big as this. Alright, so the Federal Reserve Bank or the central bank will continue to increase the money supply in order to ensure that the interest rate is stabilized, or at least not as high as this. But here the money supply is not increasing, so an increase in real money demand with a similar amount of money supply is just going to lead to an increase in interest rates, which is what we have here. Now this is graph B, and then this is graph C. So we need to sketch a third graph that is bringing the goods and the money market together using the ISLM framework at the same time. Okay, so then the third graph is here. Should I draw it under it? Okay, no problem. So we have the third graph is here, so output, and then we have the interest rate, obviously, origin 0. This is aggregate output. Okay, so the initial equilibrium was this. Did I draw it well? Anyway, I'm just trying to assume here that the interest rate from the money market happens to be the interest rates happens to be the equilibrium interest rates, although that is just to simplify stuff, so it's not necessarily the case. Let me just say at this interest rate, so let me just say we have this output which is y1, and then we have this. Okay, isn't that too steep? So let's say we're trying to have something like this. Okay, initial LM curve. I think it's even getting too flat than this. Okay, let me rub it off. We have to get something. Okay, so let me start from here then. It's meant to be a straight line, so I want it to be at least look like it. I want it to at least look like a straight line. We have something like this. Okay, I think this is better. So this is LM1, and then we have the IS curve. Nothing is happening to the IS curve, because where the price level, where the changes in price level is reflected is in the money market. Okay, so not in the goods market where we have IS curve. So we have IS1. Okay, that's what we have there. Now that the LM curve has shifted upward, so reflecting that shift here is then going to be something like this. Nope, it wasn't as much as that. So we have something like let me kind of trace this guy here. So we have I2. You don't have to do all of this stuff on your, you don't have to do all of this stuff this way. Okay, it's not necessary. But then so you have this stuff is just proving funny to drop. So then we have the LM2. So the LM curve is shifting upwards. Now if you come to think of it, okay, so where is the new, this was the old equilibrium. The market had already stabilized here. The two markets had already stabilized there when there was when there was no change at all. But now that there's a change in price level, we have to get a new equilibrium. And where is the new equilibrium occurring? That is where LM2 and IS1 are intersecting, which is at this point. Okay, so generally, so that's going to be something like I3. Okay, then you trace this guy down. Let me make it this kind of line. So we have an interest rate that is I3, and then we have a reduction in output from here to here. Okay, if you look at it, output didn't change given the changes that occurred in the money market alone, But then looking at what is happening here, output is falling. And then if you also look at what is happening in the money market alone, interest rate is going up from I1 to I2. It is really going up. But then by the time the goods market and the money market are brought together, interest rates actually increased, but it did not increase as much as what was meant to happen in this place. Okay, because the goods market had accommodated one or two things that are happening. But in essence, what we started from was I1, right? So I1 has moved to I3. So basically, interest rate has gone up. So that's just the point. So whether it is as I3 or I2, interest rate has gone up, and that is what we really want to discuss. Okay, and why is output falling? Output is falling for three reasons. I would explain, so I'll give you one as an assignment. So output is falling simply because there's an increase in interest rate. What has happened here is causing an increase in interest rates in the goods and money market, and that is lowering investment. Okay, there's a negative relationship between investments and interest rates, and I believe you know that already. So an increase in interest rates increases the cost of borrowing. Firms don't really have money of their own. Okay, it's either they take money from the public or they go to the bank to borrow money. But here we assume that they are going to borrow money, even if it were from the public. So it's still kind of the same thing that is going to happen. So this has increased the cost of borrowing, and then the loanable funds investment falls because loaning funds are now expensive to acquire, and then that leads to a lower output. So what has transpired here has remember that it all began from where there was an increase in the price level, and at the end of the day we are having a lower output. So that means here an increase in price level is leading to a reduction in the aggregate output. So an increase in the price level leading to a reduction in aggregate output, and then we have this. So that means the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. All right. So from it, I'm saying that the aggregate demand curve is downward sloping. Okay. So if you want to explain this, these are the processes that you need to go through. But once you don't need to draw graphs, because I'm trying to explain these things and I really want you to understand them. That's why I'm taking you through the steps that you should go through in order to really understand this. But once you become a boss at this thing, you can just put the whole thing down without sketching graphs. Okay, there's no problem with that at all. Okay, so that's one thing that happens. Another reason why the aggregate demand curve is down sloping is the consumption link. Now you see in the real world, okay, because here, for example, we didn't add interest rate. So here we didn't include interest rates. We didn't include consumption as a function of interest rate. Interest wasn't part of the independent variable. But in the real world, when there is an increase in interest rate, you know that household incomes are divided into two usually: consumption and then savings. Okay, and in the real world as well, household actually invest. Okay, it's not just but we assume that firms are the ones that do a lot of investment. So we are just bringing it down to household consuming and saving. An increase in interest rate simply means that the opportunity cost of holding money, okay, of using money to consume is greater now, because the returns that are being foregone in form of higher interest rates is higher than what was obtainable initially. So that means that an increase in interest rates makes savings more attractive, okay, and households are going to increase their savings. They respond to that increase in interest rates by increasing their household savings, which at the same time is going to lower consumption. Of course, income is the same, household incomes are the same, obviously. So an increase in savings simply means that consumption has to fall. Now, a decrease in consumption from what is happening now is going to lead to, remember where the old thing starts from, okay? And the old thing starts from where the goods market, where you have this curve y equals AE. Okay, no, this is just AE, and then you have this 45-degree line where this is basically y equals AE, and AE is C plus I plus G plus whatever. So a reduction in the components of AE equals C plus I plus G in a closed economy. In an open economy, you have NX, which is net export. So a reduction in consumption is going to lead to a reduction in aggregate expenditure. Okay, so you have A equals consumption is falling plus investment plus G plus NX, which is obviously 0. Okay, and that is going to shift the AE curve. This curve is going to shift it downwards. I think this is still pretty steep. let me just have something like this. Okay, so if it shifts it downwards, so there's going to be something like this. So you have AE1, AE2. All right. So, and recall that here represents the equilibrium national outputs in the goods market, and so this guy falls to whatever is going to fall to here, falls to this guy. So obviously, from the explanation, you can see that an increase in interest rates raises a household savings, and then because the income of household at that particular time is fixed, more savings simply means less consumption, and less consumption simply means less household spending on goods and services. Okay, and then that brings the aggregate expenditure function down. It lowers output. All right, so because households are no longer demanding what they were demanding before, and then that increases firms' inventories, because firms have to like respond to that, so they cut back on their own production as well. So output falls, generally. Now that is also a factor that is responsible for the downward sloping nature of the aggregate demand curve. I believe you understand these things. The price level has resulted into a higher interest rates already here. So what we analyzed here initially was the response of investment to the higher interest rates, which we discussed as saying that a higher interest rate lowers investment spending, and then that lowers output, of course, which is about. Now I'm trying to like let you know that the response of investment to interest rates is not the only factor that is causing output to fall. So the full story, or a broader story, is that consumption also responds to this. Okay, so an increase in the consumption, an increase in interest rates, makes savings more what do you call it now? Makes savings more what's the English now? More attractive. Yeah. So makes savings more attractive, and then people save more, given a fixed income at a particular point. People spend less on goods and services. You understand? So that is going to make firms to cut back on production further. So there's a less demand coming from households, and from an increase in interest rates, whereas an increase in interest rates itself also had reduced investment spending, because it's now cost more to invest. Do you understand? So when consumption falls, you also expect firms to respond to that. Okay, because you want a lot of your output there, and then where consumption has fallen. Okay, so firms also cut back on the output that they are producing, and you have outputs continue to fall like that. So here it's not just a big shift; it's actually a gradual shift that you're having here. Okay, so why you want to be shifting to it will be reducing to a new equilibrium gradually. So it's a gradual process. But so that's about that. So those are two reasons that you have a downward sloping aggregate demand curve. Now the third one is the real wealth effect, and that is going to be the assignment. So what you are going to do is to analyze the influence of real wealth effect on aggregate demand curve. So how does the real wealth effect affect the aggregate demand curve? What slope does the real wealth effect? Okay, so how does the real wealth effect influence the aggregate demand curve? What slope does it make it have? All right, so profile explanations, of course. If you are one of our students on MOD School of Economics, you now have to submit your response, and we go through it to verify if your answers are right or wrong. So thank you very much. In the next video, we'll be talking about what shapes the aggregate demand curve. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
Please like and subscribe. Thank you.